I need to say at the outset of this video, because most people don't generally watch videos of this nature from beginning to end, that many of you who eagerly look forward to viewing my videos would be wise to unsubscribe from this YouTube channel and to stop listening to the information I present here. Now, I know that sounds like a really weird statement. And why do I say that? Well, I say it because if you are a devout Christian, or if you are very comfortable with your current religious beliefs, I have no interest in hijacking your joy or causing you any internal angst. And my information is liable to cause you to feel these emotions. The scriptures have a lot to say about the way to peace, and I do not want to upset your guidance system by proposing ideas to you that would cause any internal discord, friction, frustration, depression, anger, etc. If you are Christian and if you are at peace with your Christianity, then this information is not for you, and you would be wise to reject it. It could make you sick, and I do not want you to be uncomfortable with whatever it is that you believe. The world in general is very intolerant of its differences, and most people who feel that they have the truth want to force feed you their ideas, their understandings, and interpretations as though theirs is the only one out there. I don't have any interest in doing that. What I want to do is engender peace. I do not want it to be said of me, the way of peace he does not know. It is critical to me that you are allowed to be who you are without judgment. We all need to be who and what we are without judgment. Tolerance for our differences is a critical aspect of a peaceful existence with each other, and it is a necessary component of a culture that actually thrives in interpersonal relationships amidst divergent opinions and insights. As it is, many of our differences are cause for much of the injustice and hatred that our culture engenders. It need not be this way. The information that I present in my videos and articles is not for everyone. It is definitely not for those of you who are comfortable with your current beliefs. If you belong to that group, then please just leave this information to those who have a desire to receive it. The purpose of this YouTube channel is to show that so much of what we have been taught by this world's religious culture in general, and its Christianity in particular, has simply been wrong. Now, of course, I am not qualified, nor do I have the authority to dictate everything that's right and wrong in the Christian religion. I'm as human as the next person, although no less human. However, there are many people in our culture and society that have many questions as to the validity of the teachings of Christianity. And while I can certainly say that I don't have all of the answers, I can show you, if you're able to hear past cultural and societal conditioning, that much of what the Bible really teaches about many of the principles we have been taught is so very different from the interpretations of religion and Christianity about what those principles are. I will show you what I interpret to be the essentials of the Bible teachings and why we shouldn't get bogged down with non-essentials or with things that are not going to add to your spiritual growth and development, although they may titillate your intellectual senses. I grew up under the teachings of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I was a Jehovah's Witness until I left my parents' home in 1976 when I met my first girlfriend, who was a member of the Rosicrucian Order. I witnessed her worshiping in that way for 3 years, the third year of which I met my current wife in 1978. She was a member of the Pentecostal and holiness traditions. I later became a teacher in the Baptist Church in the 1990s. One day in mid-July 1997, I attended my weekly church Bible study, and that would turn out to be the last time I set foot in a church for the purpose of learning about God, save for a 6-month stint in Unity Church of Christ in 2006, which I attended simply because of my wife's interest. During that Bible study, the pastor and I got into a very spirited debate that took up probably the last 20 minutes or so of that Bible study. And although I apparently made my points very well, as was indicated to me by a couple of the senior members of the diaconate who attended that study, I could not sleep for the next couple of weeks. I was so disturbed by that discussion. I subsequently went into a deep depression following that Bible study, wondering if I should give up all this thing we call religion. In the very beginning, all of it made sense, but now I was at the point where none of it made any sense, and I was at my wit's end. That situation ultimately drove me to my knees in August 1997, almost in tears. It was then that I had what I today call my fateful encounter with God. I told God, as I understood God at that time, that I was through with all this thing called religion and that I was ready to give it all up. I also indicated once again that in the beginning, all of this made sense, but now none of it makes any sense. And then I uttered these words, which still ring in my ears to this day, as I still don't know where the words came from at that time. I said this: Lord, if you're real, and I believe you are, and if you're omniscient, and I believe you are, I don't believe I need man to teach me about you. I believe you're capable of doing that yourself. I want to know the truth and get these words, even if it flies in the face of everything I've ever been taught about you. Now, little did I know at the time that that singular event would turn out to be the most significant event of my now 66 years on this planet. That prayer was probably the most intense prayer I've ever prayed, even to this day. The next 2 weeks following that experience were turned out to be two of the best weeks of my life, as I seemed to be getting confirmation after confirmation that I was making the right decision. I was getting confirmation from just about every source imaginable that I was now on track with my desire to understand God separate and apart from man's teachings. One instance that still stands out today was an early Saturday morning when I was sitting in my bathroom just contemplating the events of the week. After about 15 minutes, I found myself staring at the bottle of Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap that we had sitting on our bathroom table. Out of the blue, I picked it up and started to read. And what I found was a lot of spiritual sayings on the bottle. I had never noticed these before. And one of the sayings read, "Flee from the crowd and dwell with truthfulness." That statement blew me away when I read it, because that was precisely the message that I was receiving throughout most of these 2 weeks. Here, it was stated emphatically for me, where there could be no doubt about what the message was. I felt that I was getting divine inspiration from the Spirit at that time. And I would need every bit of those 2 weeks, because for the next 2 years following those 2 weeks, I literally thought I was losing my mind. In the aftermath of those 2 weeks, I bought a book by a Hindu Swami whose name was Chinmayananda. The title of the book was called Meditation and Life. Now, I have no remembrance of why I chose that book, but that was the beginning of what I now see as the beginning of a real search for God, a search that I had up to that point not undertaken, believing that I already had the truth. However, the more I got into the book, the more I could hear the words of my prior religious teachings. You better put this book down. If you don't, you're going to be in trouble. Satan is waiting to eat you alive if you don't leave it alone. This fear was real and it was palpable, and I was tempted on quite a few occasions to do just that, to put it down. But I ultimately didn't give in to the fear. I asserted to God, again, as I understood him at that time, "You said search, and I'm searching, and if I perish, I perish, but I have to know." I spent those next 2 years truly expecting that something awful was going to happen to me as a result of my deviation from my religious teachings. And then one day, as I was sitting at my desk at work, it just dawned on me in an instant: wow, I'm not dead. In fact, I'm very much alive. My search was not yielding anything terrible for me. Satan didn't destroy me after all. In fact, I had learned so much in the previous 2 years. Now, for me, this was quite an awakening. And in that singular moment, I lost all remaining fear of searching for truth. This was the actual liberating moment in my existence and freed me almost completely from my adherence to all of the religious teachings I had experienced up to that point in my life. And so, after experiencing the Hindu faith through Vedanta for the next 8 years, from 1998 to 2006, I undertook the study of the Bible on my own in 2006 after I moved from Maryland to Virginia Beach. I didn't know of any man that I could turn to because all of the people that I knew who taught the Bible belonged to some religion or other, and I no longer wanted to deal with that. So I became singularly dependent upon God, again, as I understood God at that time. And during this time, I spent lots and lots of time in meditation and study. up to 3 hours a day of meditation at its peak. It was during this time that mountains upon mountains of truths began to unveil themselves to me. I was in an ecstatic state during this period as layer upon layer of the false teachings of the Christian church began to disintegrate in light of the new truths I was discovering. I began to wonder, how in the world is it that Christianity is teaching from the same book that I'm studying? Because what I'm seeing is so much different than what Christianity teaches. And yet we're dependent upon the same book. I began to understand what appeared to be real truth, and the rest, as they say, is history. And now it's not hard to understand why there are so many denominations under the umbrella of Christianity. Now it all makes sense. And so today I am not Christian. Today I am not Muslim. Today I am not Jewish. Today I am not Hindu. Today I am not Buddhist. In fact, today I don't espouse any religion. I have come to understand that if I have to belong to any religion or denomination in order to be saved, quote unquote, then that religion becomes my savior. And that doesn't make any sense and runs contrary to what the Bible really teaches. So, what do I believe? Well, what I do believe is that Christ is the only way, but I don't believe it in the way that the church teaches it. I do believe that Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, but I don't believe it in the way the church teaches it. I do believe that Christ is God, but I don't believe it in the way the church teaches it. I do believe that Christ is coming back to earth, but I don't believe it in the way that the church teaches it. In fact, I don't believe any of these things from the literal perspective. And if you decide to stay with me on this journey, you're also in for some very interesting surprises as to what the Bible really says about some of these doctrines. At the very least, you will find food for thought and consideration, and it will put the ball in your court and empower you. Now, once again, this channel is for those who question what they've always been taught. It is for those for which the cultural religious teachings don't make any sense. This channel is for those who are looking for something other than religion. This channel is for the atheists who have never been able to make sense out of the religious teachings, to help them to understand that the Bible doesn't teach much of what religion alleges that it teaches. This channel is for those who have been tormented by religion. It is for those who feel threatened that if they don't do what religion teaches, then they are subject to great pain and suffering by a God whose alleged mercy endures forever, and yet is willing to torment them in a burning fiery hell for eternity without any hope for mercy ever. This channel is for those who fear punishment from a literal God because of an inability to be obedient. This channel is for those who fear the chastisement of a literal God more than willing to punish them for their disobedience and for not doing it the way he tells them to do it. And there is definitely a target audience for this information because many of you are almost completely disillusioned by religion in general. In fact, many of you are just fed up with religion. And I can certainly identify. I'm right there with you. However, the target audience of this information is not Christianity. So please be aware of this. This channel is not about religion. This channel is about Christ, which the Bible teaches is a power that dwells within you. This channel is about who and what Christ is and what the Bible really says about Christ. Some of the answers will shock you if you're able to see them. And again, none of this is to suggest that I know everything there is to know about everything. Far from it. Actually, I really don't know any more than anyone else. In fact, the scriptures tell us that no one understands. That means you, and that means me. We are all in darkness, so say the scriptures. I will seek to make these things plain in due course. Once again, this information is not for the masses. In fact, it is only for a select few. The reason you haven't heard from me over the past couple of months or so is because I was in the midst of a huge dilemma as far as what to do with the information I consider myself to have been blessed with. During this time, I had some health challenges that I now see as blessings, as they allowed me time to contemplate just how to deal with all of this. As many of you know by now, this has actually plagued me for many years, and after seeking answers intensely over the past couple of months, I am now convinced that I just need to be real with you, real with myself, and let you guys know where I stand, who I am, and give you an opportunity to make a decision for yourself as to what you want to do with the information I am presenting to you. Many basic Christian doctrines and understandings, in my view, don't make any sense whatsoever. For example, the doctrine of eternal torment in a burning fiery hell for the rest of eternity is probably the worst doctrine ever propounded upon a human being. I know what the Bible appears to say on this subject, but I have learned that there is much more to this doctrine than what appears on the surface. It is this kind of information that is needed by those who feel threatened more so than loved by Christianity. The doctrine about the King James Version of the Bible being the inerrant word of God is another huge misconception. The King James Version, inerrant? That's some really good wine people have been ingesting. I could spend the next 2 weeks pointing out to you all the gross inaccuracies in the King James Version, and in fact, virtually all English versions of the Bible. The Bible was interpreted for us by scholars and theologians. However, the Bible is not a scholarly work. It is a spiritual work, and the scholars simply do not understand it. There is a vast difference between scholarly work and spiritual work, and the scholars' reliance on the literal interpretation of the Bible is the primary reason why it has been so infected with so much poison. As the scripture says, the natural man simply cannot understand spiritual things, and the scholars were interpreting the Bible through their natural eyes, and the results reflect their lack of understanding of the spiritual. I will be showing you all these things in future videos and why these are errors of monumental spiritual magnitude, and they actually tear us away from the Christ and what the Christ represents. The blind have led the blind, and we have all fallen into a deep pit. And so here we are in a great pool of black darkness and deep confusion, although we don't understand or realize it. And so we're going to examine what we have always been taught and compare it against the information I am going to be presenting you. And then you are going to be the judge as to whether or not any of this makes any sense and where you can go from here. And so that's it for this video. And so once again, this is Paul Young saying, flee from the crowd and dwell with the Christ within you, Christ in you, the hope of glory.